Hi, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irene. I'm the host here. My guest today is a fellow YouTuber, Kimberly McAlindin. Welcome.
Thank you.
So you have a YouTube channel called
Knit a Rainbow.
Service. Yeah,
hmm
the story because I've seen a little bit about you talking about this story, but I think
Right.
my viewers will appreciate you sharing it. Tell us.
Oh. So I started knitting when I was 10 years old. So I've been knitting for over 40 years. And knitting for me has been like a friend that you have that maybe you don't talk to for 10 or 15 years. And then all of a sudden you pick up the phone and it's like you haven't, no time has passed. So I I have done a lot in the industry, and the last part of the industry was in the 2000s. I was the editor-in-chief of Knit 123 and Crochet 123. And it kind of ended badly, so I broke up with knitting a little bit. And then my mom got sick, and I went from having like a regular mom to having a dying mom. And it was it was 5 months, and it was pretty brutal. But when she was in the hospital, there's really nothing to do. So I stopped at my local yarn shop and picked up some yarn, and I was knitting and knitting and knitting. And then I was knitting a shawl, and it was I liked the color. It was gray, had little bits of chartreuse in there, but I picked that yarn after I found out my mother had cancer. And so, I was knitting, and she woke up from a surgery and she said, "What are you knitting?" And I said, "Oh, a shawl." And she said, "Well, who's it for?" And I said, "Oh, it's for me." And she closed her eyes and she said, "Honey, when life is hard and days are gray, knit a rainbow." And so I took that yarn back, obviously the one that I had, the ones I hadn't caked up yet. And I picked really bright, happy colors. And so I knit those. And what happened was, from my hiatus from knitting, social media kind of came in, and Ravelry was gigantic at the time. And so the wrap I knit was called Julie's Wrap by Hoagie Locatelli. And I did mine in 3 colors, and hers is in 1. And so it kind of catapulted me back into knitting, really. I brought it to my yarn shop, and everybody took pictures, and it was like this big thing. And so Knit a Rainbow came out of that. It came out of my mom, telling me to, it was just such an incredible piece of advice.
Right.
And I didn't realize that she was going to give me the tool that was going to help me after she passed away. And so it'll be 4 years. Very soon, May 8th. And, I haven't stopped.
Well, when you learned, was she the one who taught you how to knit?
My mom does not know how to knit.
So tell me how that happened.
I know. I think we skipped a generation, like twins or something. But yeah, my grandmother was a knitter and crocheter. And I remember when I was younger and I would have like a bad day at school. My grandmother passed when I was 10. And so, gosh, this is like morbid already, but it's happy. Stick with me. It's happy. So I would come home from school, and if I had a bad day or something, my mom would say, "I think you need a hug from Baba." That's what she called my grandmother. We called her my grandmother. And she would go into this wooden chest and take out a shawl that my grandmother had made, and she would wrap it up in us. And that was like a hug from our grandmother. And so that really actually stuck with me, because I did feel her in those stitches, And so even though she wasn't physically there, I could still like feel her in her crafting. And that's really stuck with me as well.
Well, I'm sure she would be so proud of you. Like, look what happened, right? Well, tell me like a little bit about how you got into the industry, because being editor-in-chief of 2 major magazines, I mean, that's not a small achievement, but like, how did it all start?
Well, it all started when my husband and I were first married, and we didn't have any money. And so I would go to a big box store and get yarn. And so when all of our friends were getting married, I would knit them blankets as a wedding gift, which took forever. And then the weddings turned into baby showers. And at one baby shower, there was a woman there, and she had made an entire basket of crocheted items. And I remember going up to her at the shower, as a fellow stitcher. And I asked her, my gosh, that is such an incredible gift. How long did it take you to do that? And what she told me was that it took her about an evening to make a baby sweater and maybe 2 evenings to make a blanket. And I thought, oh, I have to learn how to crochet. So I went up to my local Michael's and I bought myself a book and a boy crochet hook, and I practiced and practiced, and I was it just kind of consumed me, really. And so I crocheted exclusively for 4 or 5 years. And in that time, I had graduated from big box store to a local yarn shop. And that's when I, started spending a little bit more money for the yarn. And, it just working with different fibers and, falling in love with that. So I wasn't working. I was knitting around the table, and the people that I was working for at the time, their crochet instructor was moving away. And so they were in the middle of classes, and I just looked up and said, I can crochet. So I became a crochet instructor, and those women took me to TNNA. And at TNNA, they were doing their order for Taki Stacy Charles, and Stacy was helping them. And so finally we were giggling and laughing, and I had just had another baby. So it was like my first time, out in the world. And I said, he said, "Who are you?" And so they said, "Nobody can crochet like Kimberly." And so he said, "Are you a designer?" And I was about to say no, because I wasn't. And they both said yes. And so he said, "Well, I'm putting together a crochet book. Send me some designs." So I didn't know at the time that Stacy Charles was the president of TNNA at the time, right? So ignorance was bliss. And then ignorance was bliss again, because I went home and I thought, how am I going to, how do I do this? I had no idea about stitch dictionaries. I had no idea about charts. And so I came up with 2 sweaters and a belt and sent them in, and he bought all 3. And then, so I was in the first ever Taki Stacy Charles crochet book, which I think was 2005, and then, or 6. And then they had another one. And so they contacted me and wanted me to do more. And so I did. And then the person that was in charge of the designs, she moved to Coates and Clark, which is Red Heart. And so she just started asking me for designs. And so I started designing in both knit and crochet. And it just kind of snowballed from there.
Well,
so
do you remember that second when you decided for yourself that, yes, I am a designer?
I do remember that day. And it was when I received the email from Interweave that I was going to be an Interweave. That was like, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm a designer with a capital D.
What was that learning like learning how to write the pattern, learning how much to put into the pattern, how much to explain yourself, and how much can you assume other people already know what you're talking about?
That was a huge learning curve. I didn't even know when I first started, I didn't know how to grade patterns because I didn't go to FIT. I didn't, I wasn't in that design. So I would write only one size, and then they would grade it for me. And then I just, from seeing what they were doing and knitting myself and crocheting, I figured out how to do it myself. And so I still use a pencil and graph paper. And I tried to take a wonderful class about, using sheets or whatever it is, like, I don't even know what that's called, but I didn't finish. It just was too much for me. I'm a very literal thinker. And so I have to think out each size. I just finished one that's in testing a design, and it has 10 sizes. And so for each size, I kind of like have to think about it.
Tell me about your approach to design. Like, do you wake up with an idea, or do you think like, is it very practical? Like now it's we're approaching summer, so I'm going to design summer top, or last time I did a hat, so now I'm going to do a jacket. Like, how do you do your design? How do you decide what's coming next?
I design what I want to wear. So somebody asked me once, what kind of a designer I am. And I feel like my designs are very practical, and they are, and they look nice on all different body types. That's the kind of designer that I would say that I am. Back in the day when I was designing for yarn companies, they would tell me, they would send me yarn and say, we need a cable cardigan. So I was very limited, I could put my spin on it, but I love the freedom now of saying, I don't feel like making a cabled cardigan. I want to make, a cabled shawl or something like that, I like to do it that way. But really, I don't do it by season, which I probably should. I kind of do it by, what blows my dress up at the time, and a lot of times for me, the yarn tells me what it wants to be.
Do you write down the ideas? Like, how does it work? Like you decide that, oh, I want to do something like that. Do you sketch? Do you write down the ideas so you not going to forget?
I do. I have a book. I didn't bring it up with me, but I have a book of ideas. A lot of times it comes to me in the shower. I'm thinking about what I want to wear and what the weather's like. And so it's funny because we have, it's a door on our shower, so it gets steamy. And a lot of times I'll write numbers and, I'm thinking up things in the shower. And so a lot of times there are pictures on the shower door. So that's where I get a lot.
Tell me about teaching. Like, do you enjoy teaching? Was that difficult, or did it just come naturally to you?
I think teaching came very naturally to me because I love to show people in anything, it could be cooking or motherhood or whatever it is, but I love helping people make it easier. And so teaching for me, especially now that we've gone to Zoom and, my YouTube channel where, I'll have a technique or something in there. I love that. I love that it's much more accessible. It's different than the face-to-face. Obviously, you don't get the exchange of energy, but I love showing people how to make things easier.
I was actually thinking about it just yesterday of like, is it more difficult to teach on Zoom, or is it more difficult to teach in real life? Because the real life, you have this energy and you have this interaction, right? But then on Zoom, people can see you like really up close. Like they can all see every move you make, which they don't get necessarily from watching you knit next to them somewhere,
I think one of the great things about Zoom for the teachers is it's challenged us to have a new way of explaining things. And for me, in my life with my children and with knitters, I would a lot of times say, I'll show you how to do it with my hands and then you do it. But I've been challenged to be able to explain to someone as I see their hands how they can fix it. And that's not just been good for them. It's been great for me, to kind of pass on the knowledge and not show the knowledge, but just pass it.
Well, since you've been editor-in-chief, it's
Mhm.
almost logical to ask, like, do you have an ambition to publish your own book with just your designs?
No.
Tell me why.
I did, I can't believe you brought this up because I was thinking in the shower, shocker. I do have an idea for a book. Maybe I should never say never, but I do have an idea for a book. But for me, it's hard for me to do the same thing twice. Like, it's hard for me to design a short, this is a short sleeve top behind me. It's hard for me to design another short sleeve top. So I don't know. I just kind of feel like, oh, I've done that. I'm going to move on. And so I think a book would be very difficult for me for, 20 designs. I'm not sure I could come up with that. I'm not sure I'm clever enough, quite frankly.
Well, you probably are. I mean. But when you think about publishing in the magazines, and you've done a lot of designs for the magazines,
Mm-hmm.
you have limited amount of space. So you have to be very concise in
Correct.
how you write the pattern. Do you still carry it along with you now that you're doing more self-published designs?
I tried to do that. And then I had a test knit group, of 10 to 15 people, and they didn't like it. I loved it. Elizabeth Zimmerman is one of my heroes, kind of giving you, percentages of how to do things. And, I think that's when I really became a better knitter, was when I thought outside the box, when I didn't have exactly everything written and every number and, after every increase, every single size, this is what you're going to have. And I kind of loathe that a little bit, but I know that that's what I have to do now.
How do you decide who is going to be your tester? How do you get testers, and what are you looking in testers?
I am looking for the kind of old faithful, the ones that know how I write and know that, but I'm also looking for someone that has never tested before in their life, because those are the ones that ask the questions. What do you mean by this? And so I love having new testers, but honestly, Irina, sometimes it's just who says yes. Quite frankly, I don't have a huge testing pool, and sometimes
I feel like we as community, as a knitting community, we have to do something about it, because I hear it just because of what I do, right? I hear it from both sides. I hear so many people who like dreaming about testing, and they like, I fight for every test and I never get it, and I feel so frustrated. And then there's all the designers who like, I can never find testers for my projects, and people just take the patterns and disappear, and I can never find somebody reliable, so
yeah, that's another kind of, especially for a designer like me, where selling 150 patterns is great for me. So when you have 10 people that take your pattern and disappear, it's very disheartening. It's very
well, do you remember like publishing the like first self-published pattern? Was it immediate success? Was it easy for you to promote yourself?
I'm trying to think what my first self-published pattern was. It was successful, and that's because I worked at a yarn shop that had a very large online presence. Right. And so it was successful. But what is success, right? I mean, I think to myself, when I write a pattern, and let's say it's $7, I pay Ravelry, you do the same. You pay Ravelry, and then you pay whatever money. So you pay a percentage on PayPal. So I might make $5.20 on a $7 pattern, and you multiply that by, let's say I had a great showing of 100 people bought the pattern. That's $520, friends. That's like, I mean, it's not anything to be upset about. It's a wonderful thing, but then I pay taxes on $520, which, so now you're in the 300s, friends. Now you're in the 300 for the time and effort. And, and a lot of times, I don't necessarily get yarn support. So I've purchased the yarn and, so it's never, not yet. I'm never going to say never, but it's great extra money for our family, but it's never been able to,
be enough self-sufficient. Well, how do you deal with when things don't go your way? When do you get burned out? Do you ever think like, oh, I should have done something else?
No, because I think that I've been a maker many times. I can't ever imagine not being a maker. And so when I get discouraged with knitting, then I'll pick up my crochet hook. If I get discouraged with crochet, I'll spin. I'll spin yarn. I always have to be making. And it's funny because my husband retired 2 years ago, and he's very like the winter. He's like, well, I have to have this done and do this and do this. And I've never, and when, let's say the weather doesn't work, he gets very frustrated. And I've never been bored in my life. I've never, I'm telling you, because I've been a maker since I'm 10. I have never, ever, I've never been bored.
No, I can totally relate to that. Like,
right?
The same thing.
I also can't sit in the car if I'm not driving without doing, clicking my needles or, twirling my hooks. But, I'd much rather be that way.
Well, explain me your day. Like, how much time do you spend designing or doing administrative things or like whatever needs to be done for business versus actually knitting?
So I get up early-ish for me, and I go downstairs and have my coffee, and I have to knit right away. So I will be knitting on a test knit for somebody else. I love to test knit, by the way. I love to. So I'll be working on a test knit or working on something for me, and then I usually do that until lunchtime. And then at lunchtime, I've had to set up my day as I were going to the office. So we're in my studio, which is in the attic of my house. So, so then I'll go down for lunch or do whatever, and then I'll come back upstairs. And it depends, if I'm going to do a YouTube video, then, obviously I'm going to have to shower and do all that stuff, get all my stuff together. And so it depends on the week, actually, but I do feel stressed about, the social media part, the marketing part. There's a lot of marketing that has to be done.
Right.
It's a lot.
Well, I mean, is Instagram a necessary evil, or do you enjoy some part of it?
So I enjoy it because I used to be on it before I was involved in promoting myself. I think that's the hardest part, is promoting yourself and feeling icky a little bit when you're promoting something, and trying to find that balance between promoting something that's going to help you and your family, and then, showing your cute dog that's, that has a crochet sweater on. For me, it's a weird balance.
What made you decide to start a YouTube channel?
So that's a great question. Back in the day, when I was designing full time for yarn companies, YouTube was it was a baby. And what I would find is, so back in the day, I don't know if you remember, but like I would never think if I had a problem with a pattern to reach out to the pattern writer. Never. I would go to my local yarn shop and ask somebody there. I would really think about what was going on, but I would never email,
the design.
I would never do that. But when I was designing in the 2000s, and my name was on there, I actually had people call my home to ask a question about pattern. And so it actually came out of necessity, because a lot of times, and I've said this in lots of my classes, when I write a pattern, I've already written it the best way I know how to explain it to you. So if you have an issue with it, maybe go on Ravelry and see if somebody else has knit it, and then ask them. Find a different way. But Ravelry was also very, very new back when I did that. So YouTube, again, came out of necessity, where if I could show what I meant, I would put it up on my YouTube. And so there is a shawl. It's called the Sidewalk Shawl. And it's a crochet pineapple shawl. And it was knit in Red Heart yarn. And so it was on their ball band. So it's been downloaded lots and lots and lots. And so I would get emails, lots and lots and lots. And so that was kind of the first time that I did something on YouTube. And so that's how it started.
But then you changed, because like now you started with just instructional videos. You started showing techniques. And then at some point you decided to change the name of the channel, to change the direction of the channel, and to go into podcasting mode. Why?
Because I worked for a yarn shop that did it, I felt like I was helping people out there to learn. And also my podcast, the world can be very sad and it's not fair. And if I could spend a half an hour being happy with the thing that I love and sharing that, it was like sharing the ripple. And I missed doing that actually I started it before I didn't work at the yarn shop anymore, but I did it to help people, actually, just to get out there. And it's fun, it's
I
fun.
love watching you. I was like binge watching all your videos there. You have like very positive energy, so I loved watching it. It just like immediately makes you smile.
Oh, thank you. That's a wonderful compliment. That makes me happy.
Well, when you think about the direction of where you're trying to go now, right? Because you're talking about doing something for 40 plus years.
Yeah.
But things are changing and things you're adapting. And where do you see yourself going with the design business, with YouTube business, with your social media? Like, what's your goal?
My goal has always been to design garments that people will be able to wear, like in their everyday life, and make them feel good. It's no matter what I've done in my life, I have always wanted to make people feel good. And this design part of me is my way of, when I send out good, I receive good. And so I am very fortunate that my design career and this part of my life doesn't pay the bills. It's extra. And I'm very, very fortunate that happens. Mm-hmm. So where do I see myself in 10 years? I don't know, because my kids are, we're empty nesters, and I don't know where I'm going to go, but I know that I will always have this to help me along in my journey, just like it helped me along in my journey when my mom was dying. It's just a part of me. And then, do I have a goal to be Andrea Mowry? Would it be great? Sure. But that's not really my goal. My goal is to be happy. It's always been my goal. And this is something that makes me happy.
Well, then let's talk about Andrea Maury for a second. Like when you look at her success, do you analyze it? Do you try to see like what she does that catches that attention and that makes her so popular? Do you try to learn from people like her, like all the big name designers out there? Or is it depressing to see that everything they put on the market like immediately gets popular and everybody needs it, and you spend all the time and energy doing it and it doesn't get the same attention?
That's a good one. I'm going to say both. It's both. She has amazing photos. She's beautiful. She has very popular yarns for her patterns, I mean, she's kind of like the trifecta, right? So, do I learn from that? Sure. I hired a photographer, and it did nothing for me. So I had great yarn, but I was the model. So, then maybe I need a different aesthetic model. So yes, I do analyze the support. I'm sorry, the successful people. I absolutely do. Do I get frustrated? I'm human. I'm human. And yeah, sure, I do. But I'm happy for them. I'm very happy that I can do this as a side. I don't like to say side hustle. I hate that expression. I really like where I am.
Well, the thing is, like, I find the community in general very supportive. And I find that, like, every time I have a question, whether it's about an algorithm and how to deal with it, how to get more views on my Instagram video, or how to promote my YouTube channel, or something that like I was toying with the idea of getting into teaching and I was asking somebody for advice, and it was like immediate, like, let me tell you how I'm doing it and I can show you how it's done, right? So I get this like vibe of like help and communal support a lot, more so than it's competition. Like I know so many YouTubers
Right.
who came to my channel and we collaborate and we meet at Rhinebeck and at Vogue, and it's all hugs and smiles. It never feels like we in competition. Do you think there is space for everyone, or do you think it's getting crowded at the top there?
I think there's something for everyone. Absolutely. I mean, my sweaters, my garments are everyday garments, and it's important to have those everyday garments, and it's important.
How much of your wardrobe is made by you?
Anything that's knit, any sweater. I don't wear store-bought sweaters anymore. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And then I have only designed one or two shawls. I am really, if I had to like say what I do, I design sweaters. I design garments. That's my wheelhouse.
Do you usually work on just one new design, or is it like multiple designs and works on different stages of testing and stuff?
Yeah, no, I'm one at a time, girl. I thought like in 2023 that I was going to do a design every other month, but when I'm stressed out, when I'm overwhelmed, nothing gets done. And I know that about me. I'll find some obscure Netflix show that has 7,000 episodes instead of doing what I have to do at hand when I'm overwhelmed. And I know that about me. And so I don't do that.
Well, if you're not crafting, if you're not making something, what else is what other passions do you have in your life? I've heard cooking there in the background mentioned.
Yeah, I love to cook. I love to bake. We have a big Sunday dinner. It's gotten smaller as our kids are younger, but I mean, as they're getting older, but I love to have a Sunday dinner and to bake. I love to hike. My husband and I hike together, so I love to do that. And am I can't imagine. I try to think back what I did, like when I broke up with knitting for a little bit. I exercised a lot.
Miserable years.
Those years were so different, weren't they? Children were young. So I was going to baseball games and track meets and things like that, and I wasn't necessarily bringing knitting with me.
Well, do you go anywhere without your knitting nowadays?
Yes, yeah, I do. And but I do feel like if I've forgotten it, like it's something's missing. So I don't walk in knit. I've seen you do that. It's incredible. I can't do
Well, I don't do that on regular
that.
basis. It's mostly for the Instagram purposes.
I know. So, doing Instagram, doing reels now, I'm always trying to think of different reels that I can do that have to do with my craft that people would be interested in, right? Because I don't just want people that knit and crochet whilst there are millions of us. I want it to be interesting for other people too.
But I think you're doing a great job by just showing your face. Like, I know you said that maybe you need to hire different models. I actually disagree with that. I think you're doing a very important job of showing that there are knitters and models of all different ages, of all different sizes. We all have a space in it, and we all have our own fan base and all our audience,
Yeah, thank you.
I think you should just keep on doing what you're doing. I actually love seeing you on Instagram.
Oh, thank you. I love I do notice that the posts that have my face in it do better.
Right?
It's crazy, but I guess people follow you to see you, right?
Yes.
So I mean, I can't imagine people not wanting to like a picture of my tiny dog Hank. I mean, he's just the most beautiful thing, but
well,
or my kids are fun.
You can combine a picture of you with
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, I mean, I think it's I find being in the industry today, you have to be your own marketer, your own, social media person, your own photographer, your own, and then you have to do the design and the writing. Do you like to write patterns?
I don't write patterns, not just yet.
I would honestly rather give birth to a child, to an actual human, than write a pattern. And that's the problem, right? When you're a pattern designer. But I think that the thrill of when it's over, the adrenaline that I get when I finish writing a pattern I'm like an adrenaline junkie that way. Yeah.
What does your husband think? Where is he in that thing? I mean, on multiple fronts, right? First of all the time you spend involved on the social media, on YouTube. I mean, he's a YouTuber, right? And a designer and writing and knitting. And secondly, the whole yarn stash thing.
So he's such a good guy. I would say when the kids were young, it was always about, as long as I got everything done with my main job, which is the job I chose, which was to be an at-home mom, that, he's always been incredibly proud of me. So to do this, he likes it, actually. He doesn't necessarily want to be in everything, but he does like that I do it, because because it makes me happy. And that's, that's the goal. That's the goal in everything. When I first started my YouTube, the second time around, my mom had just passed away. And so I was clawing my way out of the hole of grief and sadness. And that was the spotlight that I would wake up to make something, to knit, to make something beautiful, so that I could show it on my YouTube. It was the thing that helped me find my way back to joy, because I was terrified that I would never feel joy again.
Well, how much of yourself do you usually share with your audience, whether on
All
YouTube
of it.
or?
All of it. I mean, it's funny because I have started going out and teaching at yarn shops. And so when I meet people, they're like, wow, you're exactly like your YouTube. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. I don't know how to be anybody else other than me. So that's the way I am on my YouTube. I'm exactly the same. I feel like I'm exactly the same. I would say that after I teach or after I do a YouTube, I kind of have to have have a little bit of downtime, because I've given out so much energy. I need to get some energy. And I'm all about energy. I mean, I used to be a Reiki I used to do Reiki, and, there's lots of different parts of me, but, I'm all about giving so that I could get. And I will say, though, the one thing my husband does not really like is when I rip out. When I rip something out, he freaks out. He absolutely can't understand how I could, I'm with the ball winder, and he's like, I can't even watch this. He tells me, Kay. He's like, Kay, I can't even watch this. I'm like, but it's learning. It's a good thing. I tell him it's a good thing.
Well, when I interviewed Suzanne Bryan, she told me that, if you're going to a movie theater and you're buying a ticket and a box of popcorn, you're like $20 out. And at the end of the 2 hours, you have nothing to show for it. Whereas if you buy a skein of yarn for $20, you can knit with it for days, and then you can rip it out and knit again. And it's like the $20 that keeps on giving. So it's continuous,
That is amazing.
Yeah, it's actually a great way to think about it.
That is a great way to think about it. No, yeah.
Well, I hope I'm going to run into you in one of the festivals in Podcaster Hill, perhaps.
I know. I hope so too. I think it's, I look forward to seeing you. I was at Vogue Knitting, but I was in a booth, so I didn't get to walk around. I saw that you were there because I watched your YouTube, but.
Well, next time you see me, please stop me and say.
I will. And I'm a hugger, COVID was the worst for me, because I'm like, oh, I can't, it's so hard for me not to touch, because I'm a very visceral, I have to touch things.
Okay, we're gonna hug each other on the Podcaster Hill next time I see you.
That'll be so good. I will be at Rhinebeck. I just actually booked my my hotel.
I'm gonna be there as well, so I'll see you there.
All right, that's so good.
Well, thank you so much, Kimberly, for being.
Thank you so much for having me.
Lovely to meet you here.
That's so nice.
I'll see you in person at Rhinebeck.
Sounds great. Bye.
Bye.